Welcome everybody to our next edition of Scooter Talk with Jeremy, and we're joined here today with Jeremy Bowdler. As you know, he's the editor of Scooter Magazine, that trusted publication, and we hear him each and every month give his trusted views on all things scootering. So we say hi and welcome to Jeremy once more.
It's great to be here, Alan.
Yes, thank you. So today we're going to be covering the topic of licensing, and it's a bit of a minefield, but we're going to be looking at the different rules for different states and how it all works. So first of all, Jeremy, let's start with the question, can you explain, just quickly of course, the differences between licensing across Australia?
This is going to take a little while, Alan.
Okay.
I think it's probably best to look at it from a capacity standpoint. There are 50cc scooters, which technically are imported as LN vehicles. Other scooters and motorcycles are imported as LC. That will become important later on. Anyway, in certain states and territories in Australia, which are South Australia, Western Australia, the Northern Territory and Queensland, you can learn to ride or ride a scooter on a car licence or a car learner's permit. You do not need a separate motorcycle or scooter licence. Yeah. In New South Wales, the next capacity hike, if you ride a scooter an automatic scooter of less than 125 cc's, then you qualify for a scooter licence in New South Wales, which requires you to do part of the general motorcycle course, but allows you to ride an automatic scooter of up to 125 cc's. Should you choose to ride a geared scooter like a PX Vespa or anything of a larger capacity, then you will need a full motorcycle licence. In Victoria, you need a full motorcycle licence or learner's permit to ride any sort of scooter. Now, it gets a little bit more technical when you look at different capacities in New South Wales and Tasmania and South Australia, because they have a scheme which is known as the Learner Approved Motorcycle Scheme, or LAMS. Yep. You'll see a lot of that on the websites. This requires this allows a learner to access scooters of capacity of up to 660 cc's with a power to weight limit of 150 kilowatts per tonne. Now, that sounds very complicated. Basically, it means that as a learner, you can ride any scooter in those three states.
Right, okay. That is a minefield, isn't it? So, why do you think it is different in each of the states?
It's a historical thing. The state governments are responsible for licensing and road use within their separate jurisdictions, so each of them comes up with a separate idea, a separate system of how it works, which is a nightmare for importers, a nightmare for people like us, and a nightmare for riders. Yeah,
for sure, it sure is. So do you think these rules should be uniform across Australia?
I think they really should be. When you look at the moped, that's the 50cc and car licence regulations, even that changes across those three states and the territory, because in South Australia there was a limit of 65 kilograms for the scooter, and that applied to almost no scooters, so fortunately that's been scrapped. In those states, the LN scooters are limited to 50 kilometres an hour by mechanical limiting, so any scooter which is imported must be limited to 50 kilometres an hour, unless of course you live in Western Australia where there's a 60 kilometre an hour limit. Now, imagine the setup for an importer who's importing a 50cc scooter, which will do 75 kilometres an hour in standard trim. They have to restrict that to 50 kilometres an hour, and then deal with the problem that later it may be de-restricted by the owner to bring the scooter back to its nominal performance. Now, while de-restricting a 50cc LN approved scooter is not illegal, riding it is. And we have had reports of people being pulled up on 50cc scooters for exceeding 50 kilometres an hour. So as you can see, it's a very difficult field. If there was one standard rule across Australia, it would be so much easier and cheaper for everyone.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. So who do you think has got the right sort of mix when it comes to licensing?
There is a push to bring in federal road rules and federal licensing requirements. I think it's difficult to say one state which has it right. What personally I would like to see is that the restricted 50cc, or actually a 50cc capacity limit only on a car licence. 70 kilometres an hour, I don't think is too fast for a learner. 50 kilometres an hour, you get push bikes that go quicker than that. I think the learner-approved motorcycle scheme is excellent because it allows people access to a wider range of vehicles. So I think New South Wales, Tasmania and South Australia are on the right track with that. So possibly South Australia is the pick of the states at the moment.
Right, okay. So tell us about, because there's so many rules, and obviously scooters get thrown into the motorcycle mix when it comes to doing licensing, and at the time of doing your licence you're sometimes treated as a motorcycle rider. Do you think there should be a separate rule for scooters altogether, or a separate licensing class altogether for scooters?
I think there should be. When you look at cars, you have a separate licensing structure for automatic vehicles and manual vehicles. I think something similar should apply to scooters. One of the issues is in states where there is compulsory rider training, such as New South Wales, where if you want to get your scooter licence, you have to go through the motorcycle syllabus. Now, while I can understand that the schools have a duty to teach the syllabus, learning about clutches and foot gear shifts isn't really appropriate for scooter riders. They could spend more time working on scooter-specific skills, like balancing the front and rear brake, because you have both brakes and the handlebars rather than there's a situation with the motorcycle. So I think a separate scooter syllabus would be a very good thing, and I think that might lead to reduced waiting time for scooter licensing. It might lead the powers that be to look at scooters as a separate and discrete class of road user.
Yep.
And then we could get some sensible legislation happening from there.
Yeah, that's really what we need. Okay, well, once again, thanks, Jeremy, for taking us through that subject. That is an absolute minefield, that licensing issue, across Australia, not just in any one state. So thanks again for joining us on Scooter Talk with Jeremy, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.